Back to the Future was directed by Robert Zemeckis and it stars Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. And this movie came out July 1985. In this movie, Marty Mcfly he's played by Michael J. Fox. He's a high school student. He's a high school student. He has a girlfriend, and but then until all this time, he probably learned that his parents, Lorraine and George McFly, they don't get along anymore because probably because from a couple of relationships, probably like a marriage relationship issue going on or something. But then until that night, Dr. Emmett Brown, who's played by Christopher Lloyd, calls Marty to come to Twin Pines Mall because he wants to show Marty something, and that is this time machine out of a DeLorean vehicle. But when things go wrong, Marty time travels back in time out of the 1980s, that's actually his time, and he time travels all the way back to the 1950s. He time travels to the 1950s. When he meets younger versions of his parents, he's trying to find a way. In order for him to go back to his own time, he has to try to find a way to get his younger parents back together and get help from Dr. Emmett and get some help from Dr. Brown to help Marty go back to his own time. And now we got our movie. Back to the Future was a movie that I've been thinking about reviewing for probably a minute now, and I was like, I forgot about Back to the Future. But then, this was last year, I guess, when I had been thinking about reviewing this movie. But then I forgot about it. I was like, I forgot about this movie. I wanted to review this movie, but I'm still reviewing it. I rewatched this movie, and I haven't seen this movie in a minute, but I'm glad I got a chance to rewatch it again. But I rewatched it and probably memorize and analyze, hopefully, to analyze and memorize the movie so I can explain what's happened, what's actually is in this movie. So I haven't seen my first time experiencing Back to the Future is probably when I was probably at least in elementary school or middle school. I can't remember. And I remember looking at the poster or something. I think I remember looking at the poster for the first movie and like, no, not gonna watch it. But then when I was in my 12th grade year of high school, I remember all these Back to the Future movies, like all the Back to the Future movies were actually on Netflix. And I remember watching like the first movie probably at least 1,000 times, way more than I watched Back to the Future 2 and 3. And here are all the Back to the Future movies. We have 1, 2, and 3, all these Back to the Future movies that I watched. And I still love them both. But that was back when I was in high school, when I learned about Back to the Future a little bit, but then I had a good time with Back to the Future when I was in 12th grade in high school. And that was my last year of high school though. But as an adult, but on this day as an adult, I still love Back to the Future because that's actually helps me understand rediscover me as an adult, rediscovering about Back to the Future once again. And I gotta say, Back to the Future is easily one of the best movies I ever watched. And I remember loving these movies, but as an adult, I was just like, as I rewatched it as an adult, I was like, there are a couple of moments that felt, there are a couple of scenes in the movie there are a couple of scenes that I'm not gonna tell you. You gotta check the movie out yourself if you haven't seen the film. But there were a couple of scenes that felt way more strange for me, and I was just like, oh, right, that's awkward. But I gotta say that even though this movie is PG, this movie does have some really heavy language. The movie has some really heavier language, a little bit of heavy language, more heavy language on the heavy side. But then sometimes at this time we do get some sexual references, which looks strange, even though this movie is PG. And I was like, so let me get this straight. Since this movie is actually PG, the only thing that I didn't understand is, 1, why this movie has some sexual references. 2, why heavier language? I mean, look at Jaws, for example. Look at the movie Jaws, for example. If you look at Jaws, the movie has violence, blood, even though that movie's PG, which I don't know why, even though that movie should have been rated R, to my opinion, even though that movie came out back in the 1970s. And I still love Jaws, though. But with Back to the Future, it's probably like in a different way. It's probably in a different side away from Jaws. Because Back to the Future came out in the 80s, Jaws came out back in the 70s. So I'm just saying, yeah, but I guess that's it. That's all I know. And I think that's all I know. And so let's talk about the actors and the characters. Let's start off with, excuse me. So let's start off with is Marty Mcfly, who's played by Michael J. Fox. He's really good in this movie. I really like this character. It's mainly because, the way they set him up in this movie, he does pretty good in this movie. And from what I saw, I think he was replaced. I think there was another actor who was supposed to play Marty McFly, but then he got replaced with Michael J. Fox instead. I mean, I was just like, well, with Michael J. Fox, I thought he did pretty good in this movie. And with him playing Marty McFly, I really like this character because you know, because he wants to join a band. He's in high school. He's a high school student. I can't remember. I don't really remember what grade I don't really know what grade he's in this movie, but I'm not gonna. I probably don't even want to know what grade he's in. I'm not talking about the actor. I'm talking about the character that he actually plays. And because he's a high school student, he has a girlfriend, and he wants to join in a band. He wants to join in a band. He can't get into the contest because he plays his guitar. He plays his guitar really, really loud. Yeah, imagine that. But then when he learned about his parents not getting along, when he learned about his parents in his time that his parents don't get along anymore, he time travels back in time. But even though I will talk about the relationship between Marty and Doc a little bit later. But then I don't know how long they known each other though, but in the movie, but when he time travels back in time to meet younger versions of his parents, he's trying to help them get back together. Then he's trying to go back to his own time, back to the 80s. Because that was year he was actually in, 1985. Then he time travels back to 1955, which is called the 1955, to meet younger versions of his parents. But that's why Marty McFly is still my favorite character in this movie, and that's it for him. I think that's it for Michael J. Fox as Marty McFly, and he's really good in this movie. And next up is Christopher Lloyd as Dr. Emmett Brown, or Dr. Brown, I should call him. Yeah, he's also good in this movie. Is mainly because we have a younger version of Not Marty McFly. I'm sorry. We have Christopher Lloyd as a younger version of Dr. Brown and an older version of Dr. Emmett Brown. With the younger version, I'm gonna start with the younger version. The younger version in this movie, with the younger version, when Marty meets younger Dr. Emmett Brown in this movie, all the way back to the 1950s. In this movie, Marty's like, "Look, I need your help," and then I need your help to fix this time machine, to fix this time machine that you build and also invented, and Marty needs help from that. Needs help from Dr. Emmett Brown from the 1950s for that. But then, but with Dr. Emmett Brown in this movie as a younger version, all the way back to the 50s, yes, he's an inventor. He's very smart. Yeah, he's an inventor. He's very smart, and he's more of a genius to my opinion. But then, all I know is, with the younger version is pretty cool. But then we get to the older version, back to Marty's time in the 1980s, or 1985, I should say. Dr. Emmett Brown from the 1980s, excuse me, when he been thinking about building this time machine. He builds this time machine, but when he tests it out, after he tests it out, he's like, "Oh, it works, pretty cool, it works." And then when it works, it actually works it actually works perfectly for him. Yeah, Dr. Emmett Brown has been thinking about building this time machine out of this DeLorean for a very long time. Or he probably said, I've been waiting my whole life to build this time machine out of this or that or something like that. And I gotta say that I think Christopher Lloyd did a really good job in this movie as this character. And he's pretty good in this movie. And next up is, and now we have Marty McFly's girlfriend, we have Marty McFly's girlfriend as Jennifer, who's played by Claudia Wells. And she's not in the movie all that much. I mean, we do see her probably at least 3 or 4 minutes, and gone. And then afterwards, we see her later on, probably at least later, all the way later, in the movie, and that's it. All I know is she's not in the movie all that much. Well, she is in the movie, but we see her for at least a brief minute and gone. And but I thought she did pretty good in this movie as well. That's all I know for this character. And then now we get to Marty McFly's parents, and now let's start off with is George McFly as George McFly, younger George and older George, who's played by Crispin Glover. Now I gotta say, Crispin Glover is really good in this movie. Now I'm gonna start with the younger version. The younger version in this movie, all the way back to the 1950s, when Marty reads a younger version of his father, George McFly, he actually discovers that his father has been bullied and picked on by Biff. And Biff is like the one character that he just doesn't like. But then he has to do what Biff tells him to do. Hey, where's my homework? Have you finished my homework last night? And with the older version, where are my copies? Or where are my reports? Have you finished them? But with the younger, I'm still with the younger version. The younger version still gets picked on and bullied by Biff. And Biff's never going to leave him alone. Ever. Like, ever. But then Marty is trying to help George stand up against Biff. And then with older George on the other hand, I gotta say, with older George, as an adult, as Marty McFly's, as Marty's father from Marty's time in 1985. I mean, one of the most craziest things about this character, he's like, Marty, I'm sorry. And I mean, I'm not making this up. Like, I'm not making this up. Like, this is what he did in the movie. And I was like, you know what? I think Crispin Glover did a really good job as both of these characters, as younger and older George. And with older George, I like the makeup and then the way he's wearing glasses. He's wearing the glasses, he's wearing the makeup and everything, and it looks pretty good. But with older George, on the other hand, he probably sometimes acts like the same old George as a younger version of. Yeah, he probably acts like the younger version of George at sometimes in this movie. Well, we only see a little bit of the older George, probably at least a brief minute, and that's it. But we do see younger George throughout the whole movie. And I gotta say, Crispin Glover is really good in this. And Crispin Glover as George McFly is really good in this movie. And next up is Lorraine Baines. We have younger Lorraine and older Lorraine, who's played by Leah Thompson. And Leah Thompson is really good in this movie. I'm gonna start with the younger version. With the younger version, I gotta say, the younger version, when Marty meets his mother meets a younger version of his mother for the first time in the 1950s, his mother thinks that Marty's name is Calvin Klein, and and still trying to get attracted, and she's still trying to get attracted and addicted to Marty, but she still calls him Calvin Klein throughout the whole movie. But she still calls him Calvin Klein throughout the whole movie. I'm talking about the younger version, because the younger version the younger version of Lorraine. She gets harassed by Biff in this movie, and I'm looking like, Biff, leave her alone. And then with Leah Thompson as younger Lorraine is really good here. But the older Lorraine, played by Leah Thompson, I gotta say, the makeup on this character looks pretty good. They do a really good job with the makeup and everything to make her look like an older version of Lorraine Baines. Yeah, of Lorraine Baines, actually. But we do discover of what she's talking about, of how did her and George meet way back when they were young. and way back when they were young, and she talks to the kids about it in the movie. She talks to her kids about it, and then but thing is, she thinks that George is thinking about himself instead, and I gotta say that with Leah Thompson in this movie, she did a really good job as both of Lorraine, as a younger and older Lorraine in this movie, and she did a pretty good job here. And last but not least, here's last but not least is Biff. What are you looking at, butthead? He's played by Thomas. He's played by Thomas F. Wilson. And that's his. I'm not making this up. Like that's actually his catchphrase in the movie. If you watch the movie yourself, you know what I'm gonna. If you've seen the movie yourself, you know what I'm talking about. With him playing this character, with Thomas F. Wilson is really good as Biff. This is the guy that you do not. This is the character you do not want to mess with, because with the young, I'm gonna start off with the younger version. The younger version, on the other hand, the thing is with the younger version all the way back to the 50s, he bullies. He's a bully. He has his pals with him. Always have his back. And George is like, yeah, they're bigger than me. I can't stand up for myself. This is what they do. All they're gonna do is pick on me, and that's it. And because a young Biff from the 1950s, he's a bully. He bullies George McFly and harasses Lorraine in the movie. And the thing is about this character, about younger Biff, I gotta say that this guy is actually big, and this is the character that George does not want to mess with, but he never messes with him at all. He's like, because he's always telling George what to do. Like, for example, hey, did you do my homework last night, McFly? Have you done my homework yet? Is it finished? It better be done by tonight. And I'm like, ooh, that's not good. That's bad news. But then we get to older Biff. We get to older version of Biff, who's still played by Thomas F. Wilson. I gotta say that we do see him. I only see him for at least probably at least 2 or 3 minutes and gone, and that's it. I mean, probably at least 2 or 3 minutes in the movie. But then he doesn't. But him as an older version of Biff, he doesn't really bully George McFly. But sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. But I gotta say that I think that's it for Thomas F. Wilson in this movie as Biff, and he did a really good job here. And the actors, and I think that's it for the actors and the characters in this movie. And and I gotta say this entire movie is pretty good as well. And Robert Zemeckis is really good with shots in the movie, and it's really good with shots in this movie. The way he handles them without whatever. But I gotta say that with Robert Zemeckis, he's did a really good job directing this movie. Robert Zemeckis is still my favorite director on this day, and one of the most strangest things about one of the most strangest relationships is Marty Mcfly and Dr. Emmett Brown. It's a strange relationship. My biggest problems with this movie. The main problems I have with this film is the movie doesn't really explain how they first meet, or show how did they first meet for the first time. That's my biggest problems with the movie. But I thought they had a really good chemistry, because I feel like that's because with Marty's like 17 years old, I guess, and Dr. Brown is older, and it's a strange relationship. And I'm thinking, the movie doesn't really show or explain how they first meet for the first time. I wish they had a little bit of a backstory for it, but they don't. I guess the writers were running out of ideas for that, and I can understand that. And also what else I enjoy about this, the weirdest things about this movie, what else I enjoy about this movie is the way that the movie was set up. Like when Marty is in the 1980s, discovering that his parents don't get along, but then he's trying to get his parents back together because when he's in 1955, he's trying to get his parents back together. So when he goes back to his own time, it's the only way to get his parents back together. So I believe with Marty's story with Marty, I'm gonna say Marty's more like the main character in this movie, way more than Dr. Emmett Brown is. Um because he's in the movie a lot, even though he does get a lot of screen time though. But I think what else I enjoy about this film is how they set up the stuff from the 1950s, because it's a time traveling movie. This is a movie about time travel. Marty time traveling with this DeLorean. This DeLorean right here that's made out of a time machine. When he used the DeLorean out of a time machine after Dr. Brown invented it and built it, he time travels to the 1950s, and then Marty thought that he was dreaming, but no, it's actually real. Like, I'm like, dude, you're not dreaming. Like, it's actually real. You're in the 1950s, and he's like, yeah, this has got to be a dream or something. But and also the story in this movie felt more really interesting. The way the movie was set up about time travel. It's not just about time travel. It's not just about time travel. I think this movie is a little bit more like this movie's not just about time travel. Like, it's about, man, I don't know how to explain it, but I think this movie's not just about time travel. It's about Marty, who's trying to understand why his parents don't get along, and also trying to help his younger version of his parents trying to get back together. But then Dr. Emmett Brown from the 1950s is trying to help Marty trying to get back to his own time. And I gotta say, this whole entire movie does a really good job setting up the Back to the Future. I gotta say that this movie also sets up the Back to the Future's lore. And also, I think this movie I think the film at some times does have some really heavier language and some sexual references, which that was unexpected for me, which it was my first time experiencing and watching this movie. And I'm like, oh, okay, never mind then. Even though this movie is PG, I'm just saying, no offense. I think this movie could have been on the PG-13 side, but I guess back in the 80s, I guess movies didn't have any PG-13 ratings in the past. All I know is they had PG, rated G, and rated R, probably back in the day. But I guess that's it for Back to the Future. And there's nothing much to say about this movie, and I think that's about it for Back to the Future. And that's about it. Nothing else to say about it. So be sure to subscribe, post notification bell, follow me on Instagram, comment down below, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you for watching.